Hi, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa. Whatever you celebrate, I hope you have a chance to celebrate over the coming days and weeks. This has been a very tough week for so many of us, for the whole world. Tough year. And I thought it would be a good idea to come before you with a message person to person, face to face, rather than just in writing, as I most often do. Fear is all around us. We're being beaten down with so much harshness. But the murder of innocence, as we saw at Brown and Bondi Beach this week, brings it up to even a higher level of desperation. The image of a 10-year-old girl, aptly named Matilda, a name symbolic of the joy and love of the nation of Australia and of the very nation itself, and a girl who was there to celebrate the Festival of Lights, gunned down in all her innocence. It's impossible to get that thought out of our minds. The students at Brown and the MIT professor in Brookline all killed so senselessly. These events can easily crush us. I know I have a close connection to all three scenes of the crime, and to the Jewish people, of course, once again so ruthlessly targeted in Sydney. And the murder of Hollywood icons Rob and Michelle Reiner add to our grief and fear. We're too dazed to respond, even to the indefensible tirades of Donald Trump in response to all this. And now we brace ourselves for more shock and the release of the Epstein files and the realization that there is so much evil around us. It's good that we have the Joseph story in the portions from the Torah surrounding the festival of Hanukkah, including this week, for it has a lot to teach us about uncertain times and how we live in a constant state of perplexity, and how easy it is to become confused by all the posturing, especially these days where truth seems so relative and so diluted with all the pundits and the politicians. And they paralyze us with their spin, and we spin and spin like a dreidel. But Joseph lived in a similar kind of situation, and he teaches us how to respond to things that might otherwise freeze us in indecision and shock. In chapter 39 of Genesis, Joseph is confronted by the greatest test of his young life, the advances of Potiphar's wife. She finds him handsome, wants him, and from her position of power proceeds to embark on a campaign of what we would call in our day sexual harassment in the workplace. The Torah gives us Joseph's response to those advances in verse 8. It says, "But he refused and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master having me knows not what is in his house, and he has put all that he has into my hand. He's trusted me." It all sounds very clear cut and courageous, but the musical cantillation, this is where it gets a little interesting. The cantillation for the word, the trope for the word he resisted by Yima'ain, tells another story entirely. It's a shalshelet, comes from the word three, and it appears only a few times in the entire Torah. Basically, it goes like this. Shalshelet. It goes up three times and comes down. It's like a roller coaster. Three times. It is a hamlet of a note, and whenever it's used, it connotes hesitation. It's accompanied by the recognition of a fateful personal choice that needs to be made. Rabbi Stephen Nathan comments that Joseph was actually living in a world of shalshelet. He writes, "For at various times in our life, we live in the shalshelet, that long drawn out wavering place where all seems uncertain." In his commentary, he's speaking about sexuality and identity, but I think the analogy can also apply to violence and fear. We often speak of being numb to the endless wave of mass murder that is happening around us, to the shootings, especially the shootings and terror attacks, and to a degree that's true. The list of mass shootings has become so endless we barely have time to assimilate one before we need to shift focus to the next, from Brown to Bondi, in a matter of minutes. We saw that this week. Murder has become all too routine. Bonn to Bondi to Brookline. It's easy to be paralyzed both by the overwhelming, apparent, unstoppable wave of horror that we confront, and by our fear to do anything or say anything about it or all the other atrocities, the moral atrocities we are seeing around us these days. The Talmud in Tractate Yoma 36a shows how Mrs. Potiphar tried to seduce her prey. It says, each day the wife of Potiphar would attempt to seduce Joseph with words. Clothing she wore for him in the morning, she would not wear for him in the evening. Clothing she wore for him in the evening, she would not wear for him in the morning. And she said to him, surrender to me. And he answered her, no. And then she threatens him. I'll confine you to prison. I'll subdue your proud stature. I'll blind your eyes. But Joseph refused her. She then gave him a huge sum of money, but he did not budge. Not even Mrs. Robinson went to such lengths to seduce Benjamin Braddock. The Talmud in Tractate Sota 36b then provides a detailed picture of Joseph's inner struggle, that vayima'en, that word, that shalshelet note. The image of his father appears to Joseph in the window and says, Joseph, your brothers' names are destined to be inscribed on the stones of the high priest's apron, and you will be among them. Do you want your name to be erased? Do you want to be called an adulterer? An interesting analogy can be drawn by those who desire to put their names on so many things. Ultimately, their names will be erased. But Joseph's name lives forever because he resisted the temptation to do evil. In the end, the ambivalence of the shalshelet is transformed into an amplification of the refusal. Joseph doesn't just refuse her, he does so 3 times in a single word. His no becomes no, no, no. Still, she doesn't take it. She doesn't accept it. But his no is absolutely no and positively no. I can almost hear Joseph banging on the glass like Benjamin Braddock at the church, proclaiming that his ambivalence toward life is now over and he is ready to forge his destiny rather than being the passive pawn in someone else's game. With a wave of terror and evil and hypocrisy so intense in our lives as we approach the 2nd year of this Trump regime, we need to say no, no, no by affirming life in the face of death. So how do we do that? By celebrating life wherever and whenever we can, by preserving innocence, including that beautiful innocence embodied in Matilda, who died. We must preserve that innocence wherever we can by acting courageously to defeat the ideology of hatred, and that includes anti-Semitism, of course, but all forms of hatred, and by acting courageously to remove the means of mass murder, both in terms of helping those who need help, mental health, removing the guns from their possession. And by living lives of senseless beauty and practicing random acts of kindness wherever we go, pay it forward, pay it back. I've noticed over the last, I don't know, maybe 11 months, strange thing happening. Whenever I go into a supermarket or a rest stop on the highway, someone always holds a door for me, even if I'm like 5 paces behind. People are starting to hold doors. Maybe that's our way of resistance. Maybe it's our way of affirming our humanity, paying it backwards. In other words, holding the door for the person behind you, helping the person behind you to catch up, all the little things. It's starting to happen. We are defeating the evils that we see around us through an abundance of good. On this Hanukkah, let's fight fear with fire. As this conflagration of madness engulfs our world, let's defeat it by lighting one simple flame, and then by lighting it several times, as we are doing on this holiday. And then courageously, we should continue to add, even beyond the three of the Shalshelet, one more each night, until the whole world is filled with our light. Thank you all so much for listening.